This podcast is sponsored by Path to Publishing, helping authors to take control over their publishing journey for over 21 years. Visit pathtopublishing.com to get on the path to publishing your next book.
Welcome to It's Truly Novel. I'm your hostess, Brandy M. Miller, and this is my guest, Andrew Weiss, and he's here to talk about his new podcast, Rapid Results. Welcome to the show, Andrew. I am so happy to have you here. Let's talk about your podcast. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I actually got involved in the podcasting industry in 2020, and I was essentially did the events marketing for them. And then I met a wonderful woman named Celicia who had been doing a podcast for about 2 years, and everyone keeps saying, start a podcast, start a podcast, start a podcast. And so she showed me how to just click publish on a little mini podcast called Fight the Fluff, and I essentially took content from a virtual event that I ran. And it's so crazy how much our fears and our comprehensions of things, we always over exaggerate how tricky or how complicated it's going to be. But then once you actually click record and then click stop record and then click upload and then click publish, you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad. And so I essentially got a little mini teaser with my Fight the Fluff podcast. I'm pretty sure that's on Spotify and iTunes too, but I just did like a couple episodes just to get it out of my system. And then in 2022, I'm like, you know what? I want an excuse to talk to 52 people and share the knowledge with everyone else about how to get rapid results and how to do that by not making the same mistake as others. So I just launched Rapid Results with Andrew Weiss for my birthday, April 30th, 2022. And I'm going to release 52 episodes for 2022.
Very nice. So do you have those pre-recorded or is it going to be a weekly?
What I do is I do weekly live stream shows with all my guests. I just love the live stream video feature. So I work with a guy named Chris Komitsos who started this company called Podfest, and it's about everything new and evolving in the podcasting industry. And so that's the company I also work with. And Chris wrote a book called Start Ugly. And from that Start Ugly book, it just talks about just get going, just get going, just get going. And so I'm in this Start Ugly phase where I'm just hosting live streamed interviews with people, and then I'm taking the audio and then putting the intro and outro and editing it and putting it into a podcast. So that's my current plan of attack. But of course, as I've noticed, it is sometimes better to do pre-recorded so you can adjust it before it goes live. But in the meantime, I'm just going with the flow. I'm going to do a first year of live stream or when I decide to change, and from there, take the audio and create great content.
Well, I think there is a benefit to live. I think you could actually have two versions. I mean, you can have the live for those who are like maybe subscribers. They get to hear the ugly version.
Yes, exactly.
And then you can put out the pretty version on YouTube.
Exactly. Yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, that way you get people who want to hear the nitty gritty behind the scenes, what really happened type thing. And you also hit the people who just want to hear the info without the ugly. So
yeah,
it can work both ways.
It's definitely exciting because you do run into tech problems sometimes going live, and then like sometimes people go, oh, I don't know if I meant to say that or not, but it's all part of the excitement.
Exactly.
So
no, I mean,
it goes.
I had a interview this week with a lady, and originally her magazine was slated to come out this month, and then at the last minute there was like, yeah, we're not ready for that. It's not going to come out for 2 months. So,
oh no.
Well, no, but that's the benefit of having recorded is that I can go back and kind of edit out the dates, and so it just stays fresh and pretty.
Yes, no, I love that, and I love the topic of your show, Truly Novel, and just keeping things up to date all the time, and you got to think times change quickly, so it's good. Props to you for attempting to keep up.
And one of the things I was planning to do, which I haven't done yet, was just kind of comb through, like, for instance, crowdfunding campaigns, look at what people are putting out there and invite those kind of people. But I noticed you had this new podcast, so it was the perfect opportunity.
Yes, no, it's been a blast. So far I've interviewed fellow brothers in my mastermind. I'm in a mastermind called Iron Sharpens Iron, and essentially it's a mastermind that talks about how to have a complete life of being successful financially, personally, family-wise, spiritually, because some masterminds, they only talk about business, or only talk about relationships.
Yeah.
So this is a more wholesome group. I had the chance to interview my fiance. I had the chance to interview my father, and just other 7-figure entrepreneurs too. And it really has been super awesome just being able to ask people the questions to get the answers that other people wish they had and be able to share the knowledge.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. I think the first year I spent in business as a ghostwriter, it was spent interviewing people, about their life stories. So I got to learn a lot from people who had been places I'd never dreamt of being and done things I'd never yet accomplished. You learn a lot when you listen to other people's experiences.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. It's the fact that you get to share those experiences and those conversations with the world is just so awesome, because, I'm sure you've had a lot of conversations. You're like, gosh, I wish other people knew what we're talking about right now, because this helps answer a lot of questions. And yeah, that's why I named my show Rapid Results, because I want to make sure people don't make the same mistakes as others. And you don't know what you don't know until you find out.
This is absolutely true. And I think we underestimate the vast volume of things we don't know. It's like the older I get, the more I realize that what I think I know is a drop in the ocean of things that there are to know. And the more I appreciate the perspective and the experience that somebody else brings to the table. So what was the most challenging thing about stepping up and getting the podcast out there?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, I mean, a lot of work can go into your podcast, of course, and obviously it depends on your time and the effort and the budget that you want to put in. Because, in a perfect world, as the podcast host, you're able to just show up and talk with your guest, and then once you click stop, you can do hands off and just kind of be done with it. But when you're just getting started, if you don't have the biggest budget put together, it is tricky figuring out, how do you properly edit the episode? How do you make sure that the guests show up on time? How do you know which guests to bring on? For me, being a perfectionist, I'd say the most challenging part is making sure that your episode quality is at the quality that you want it to be. Some people like to take out filler words, making sure you level out all the sound balancing. And so I'd say that the perfection piece of your episode, but goes back to, start ugly. It's usually better just to get started, get going, learn along the way. Or if you have the budget, just pay someone to do all your editing and trust them to do a good job with it. And make sure you have a great intro and outro as well. And just from there, just keep producing, keep going. I mean, right now, I believe Joe Rogan, even though he's under a lot of fire for various things, he, as far as I know, he has one of the biggest podcast deals in the world, with Spotify paying him $100 million. And people don't realize he had to do over 2,500 episodes before he even really got that deal. And so that's why it's so much better to get started and keep going and learning along the way.
I think so. I mean, because if you never get started, then you never have the chance to fail, but you also never have the chance to succeed.
Exactly.
That's the thing, is that I think we expect to start off perfect, but I've learned over time that perfection is more of a journey than it is a destination. It's something you'll always strive toward, and you can always get better. But if you wait until you're perfect, you'll never get there.
Exactly. No, exactly. It's just, that's part of life too, is, enjoying the journey, having fun along the way, but the outcome is important too.
Yeah, there is. Well, I think it's important to have a goal, but I also think it's important to celebrate the steps that you take and to enjoy the journey. I used to be so focused on my goals that I would miss out on the joy of the journey. I wouldn't even remember the journey. It was like, it was too important for me to get to the goal. And I regret that, because that means that there's a lot. It's like going on a trip, right? And you don't even take time to stop and enjoy the places that you're going through. They're just mile markers, and you don't notice them or observe them.
Yeah, I'm curious. Tell me, is there a specific example you're thinking of where you reached a goal and you didn't remember the journey, or a time you did reach the goal and you did remember the journey?
Up until like recently, it's basically every goal I've ever hit. I don't even remember all of the details of the journey. It was just, I was so laser focused on getting there. And I think that misses so much of life, because so much of life is the journey.
Mm-hmm.
The goals, as I get older, I realize that the goals are just there to give you purpose, like something to shoot for, and that we should take the time to celebrate the milestones, enjoy the journey, and really live, not just for our goals, but live.
Oh yeah, and I agree about celebrating milestones. Like I remember, yes, when I published my Fight the Fluff podcast, and I just clicked publish, and I got to see my show on Spotify and iTunes. I'm like, oh, cool, I'm a podcaster.
I know, right? You get to change that label.
Yeah, where my fiance, she's like, what? I didn't call myself a podcaster until I was 50 episodes in. What the heck?
It's like the first book I published. You get to be a published author. Congratulations.
Yep.
You've
counts.
joined an official level of like 3% of the population of the Earth actually has a published
really?
book. So
is that the
you
stat?
are
Only 3% of people publish
I would
books?
say probably even less than that, but I'm going to be generous.
Okay.
And say 3%. We got 7 billion people.
That's a lot of people. But I think we're coming up on 8 billion now, actually. People forget that the population increased over the last 3 years as well.
It did increase, but it's going to start leveling off because we're not having as many kids anymore. So
that's
sadly.
Yeah.
I find that to be sad. But any rate, so what is it you're looking forward to in the future of your podcast?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I definitely love, being able to share wisdom, and so my last name is Weiss. My company is Weiss Wisdom LLC, and I love just being able to bring on, whoever I want, whenever I want. Like it would be cool at some point just be like friends with, Joe Rogan and just have him come on my show, or because I hosted, another person on my show, that Joe Rogan brought me on his show because he's like, oh my gosh, who's this Andrew Weiss guy? And so I definitely love the aspect of being able to get to that, 100 episode mark, 1,000 episode mark, and also using it as leverage to grow my own coaching brand and consulting brand, where I do sales and marketing coaching for people, and also being able to monetize the show. And so, yeah, a lot of people do have full-time incomes off being a podcaster or being a show host. And it would be great to be able to leverage that as one of my income sources while having fun, like you said, along the journey too.
Yeah, and expanding your network. I mean, I think that's one of the most underrated things that small business owners don't necessarily really understand, is that the bigger your network is, the bigger your chance of success. The more people who know you and know what you can do, the more they can reach out to their contacts and kind of help you get where you want to go. Like, for instance, if we didn't have each other in their network, I wouldn't have known about your podcast. I would never have had the chance to bring you on the show.
Yeah. So, and I want to point to that too, that, a lot of people, we fall into that trap of, I think it's, is it Field of Angels or something, the movie where the famous line is, oh, if you build it, they will come. But that's not how life works anymore.
No. Well, I don't know that it ever really did. To be perfectly honest, I don't really know that it ever did. It's like if I go out in the middle of a field of nowhere and build something, how is anybody going to know that it's there? Like, if I'm not talking about it, if I'm not reaching out to people and communicating my message, how's anybody supposed to know it's there?
Exactly. So I just want to speak to the testament of openly and boldly promoting your products, your services, your podcast, every chance you get. And because I had the courage to promote my podcast and say, hey, everyone, it's released, it's here, check it out. That's when Brandy was able to go, oh, Andrew, you have a podcast. That's awesome. Let me bring you on my show to help promote it. So I just really want to encourage people that it's okay to brag about yourself sometimes and promote yourself, because if you don't promote yourself, who else will? And just kind of having that mentality.
This is true. Well, one of the things that I've had to struggle with overcoming is that tendency for me to like to hide behind the scenes and not promote myself. But the thing is, it goes right back to, if you're not promoting yourself, then in a sense, you're actually robbing other people of the opportunity to benefit from what you have to offer, because they don't know you. and they don't know you exist, and they don't know what you could do. But if they do know, well, then things change.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I know, that is a lot of mindset stuff that, I had to go through. A lot of people still need to go through is just, the importance of having the courage, the confidence to constantly promote your own products and services and understand that you are giving value to people, and that you are helping someone, and that people need your work. They need your guidance. They need that solution that you're helping to provide. And if you don't know that solution that you help provide to people yet, well, obviously you can have a few conversations with me or other business experts to help you discover that. But it is, a classic example is just helping you frame things is like, if someone's in the desert and you're just walking around with a cup of water, they're going to want that water. And so if you, in your case, Brandy, if someone wants to go, if someone's been lying awake at night thinking, gosh, I wish I knew how to write a book or publish a book. If Brandy didn't say, hey, by the way, I help people write and publish books, they would still be lost. And so remembering that you do give value to people and being confident in that.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes back, though, I wouldn't have started my podcast except that I have a network of people who are nudging me to get out there. And that's what a good network will do for you, too. They're like, hey, you need to stop pretending like you don't have something great to offer. You need to get out there. You need to make yourself known. You need to stop being the best kept secret on the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not a badge of honor for the record.
Yeah, the best kept secret's not. Yeah, you don't get any awards for being the best kept secret. That's true.
So, that's one of those things. So I'm really happy and excited for you that you're starting up this podcast. So what are some of the most surprising things that have come out of developing the podcast?
Ooh, I mean, what's cool is that when I launched it, I asked if people wanted to support the show by doing a review or giving me, there's an awesome subscription service called Buy Me a Coffee where people can like chip in money to your cause. So it was really awesome that people chipped in money when I released my podcast. Shout out to Jessica Silverman and John Rodkey for helping to make that possible. And then the fact that I've already been able to get awesome guests that I've wanted to come on as well and help fill the slots. Because as I mentioned, my goal is to do 52 interviews in 2022. And I originally was doing, I want to say, what was I doing? Like 3 to 4. Well, let's see. I think I was doing 2 to 4 a week for a month. So originally I started off by doing like 10 interviews a month or something like that. But I've since scaled it back to just 1 interview a week, but I might go back to doing bulk recording so I can just take the rest of the holidays off and have it be scheduled to post essentially. But yeah, surprising wise, I'd say it was awesome to be able to get people to write good reviews on the podcast, have the people chip in financially to subscribe as a thank you for creating the podcast. And just the amount of buzz that it created, people being excited for me for releasing the podcast. That was surprising and heartwarming and inspiring as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that does come out of it is that if you ask for support, you'll often be surprised to find out, if you're in the right circles, how much support there is for you. Like I had a friend of mine, it's a business helping people publish their books. So I help them write the books and then she helps them publish them. So
nice.
We kind of partner together on that. And when I told her I was starting up the podcast, she was like, oh, well, I just spent this amount of money on this new podcast platform. So I'm going to give you some of these credentials and you can basically take this and run with it. And I was like, that's amazing. So it's like sponsorship straight out of the box.
Wow. Wait, you got sponsored before you even starting your podcast?
Yeah. Path to Publishing is the official sponsor of It's Truly Novel. So
that is awesome. Congratulations. And I hope that's a testament and inspiration for other people too, that you don't have to have hundreds or thousands of followers to get a sponsor, and that it is possible to get a sponsor before you even start your show. Like it's totally a thing. Like you said, it goes back to your relationships and that your network is your net worth, and that you are who you spend time with. So congrats to you on that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's also, how much value have you added to somebody else's life before you start asking for people to give you things? How much have you given? Because relationships are kind of like a bank account where you need to have put in money before you consider taking money out, Banks don't usually appreciate it if you put in $10 and take out 100. They usually frown on that kind of thing. And,
Yes.
and people are the same way. If you've put in $10 worth of service, but you're expecting $100 worth of service in return, you're not creating the kind of healthy relationship that will build your network strong. But if you start out by giving service to others, not only are you demonstrating your value, but you're also contributing to that bank account that builds up over time. And then when you need it, it'll come back to you.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Definitely. When I was in a fraternity in college, we constantly had that talk that in the world there are people who are builders and there are people who are takers. And usually, when you want to be a builder, every chance you get, you want to be a giver within reason. Obviously, there's the classic story of the giving tree, and it didn't really end up well for the tree. But
This is true. I mean, you can pour yourself out to the point where you're empty. So you do need to be you need to be filling your cup on a regular basis so that you can continue to give out. But I will say, on that note, though, we often get frustrated in our giving to certain people because we're not getting back from them. But if we broaden our perspective and look at it as we shouldn't expect to get back from them, what we should expect is to get back from the universe. Because it's set up to reward those who plant seeds abundantly. If you think about it, those who are generous with their sowing get generous harvests in return.
Oh yes.
But not every seed produces fruit. So we shouldn't expect every seed to come back and flower. It won't happen. We'll be disappointed, but that doesn't mean we don't need to stop. The ground can still benefit from that seed. Even if it doesn't produce fruit, it becomes fertilizer.
Exactly. So how do you go about sowing seeds with your business, with your life? Like how do you intentionally go about that?
I look for opportunities to serve other people. And I don't worry about whether they in particular return to me anything. Because if my goal in service is to get something, that's not really service, that's manipulation. So my goal in serving is just to help the person. If something comes back to me from it, that's fantastic, but I don't expect that. I don't set that expectation for myself. My service is a gift to them. But what I have learned is that other people are watching what you do. So you may not get it back from that person that you're serving right then, but it'll come from maybe word of mouth down the line, or maybe somebody sees what you do and they come up and they reward you. The rewards will come, and it's even personal reward is I feel better about myself when I do it.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a chance to practice my skills, my gifts, and my abilities. So that makes me a better person automatically. So that's reward in and of itself. I know who I want to be, and I'm not letting the world dictate that to me by what they do.
No, I love that. Like you need to tell the world who you want to be and who you are and what you offer, what you stand for, or else the world will decide for you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's part of leadership, right? Is learning that you set the tone for who you want to be. You don't react to the events around you. You decide ahead of time who it is you want to be, and then you choose your response to what happens based on who you want to be, not on what the world is doing. So if somebody hurts me, I can either react to that hurt by hurting them in return, which is rarely productive. Then you're just escalating things, right? Back and forth. It's like that cartoon where you see, Bugs Bunny slaps Daffy Duck and they just keep slapping back and forth. And
yes, exactly.
Doesn't produce anything, right? But if you stand there and say, okay, you hit me, that's who you are. But who do I want to be in return? Do I want to return violence for violence? Do I want to let you lead me into a behavior I don't want to exhibit? If the answer is no, then I get to choose my response.
Yeah, I'm definitely as I've learned over the years, it is good to be kind, but you also have to be careful about not being excessively kind. You do, because you also don't want to be walked over and have people.
Well, I didn't say you needed to stand there and let them continue slapping you.
Exactly. Yes, I do want to make sure that that is being understood and heard. Is that you got to be ready to demand respect or not tolerate certain things. But of course, when you can get the chance, be kind. But of course, like you said, don't just stand there and let yourself be slapped just in the sake of kindness.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do need to establish boundaries and stand up for your boundaries. But if you're allowing other people to lead you into a negative behavior, then they're the leader, you're the follower. Because I prefer to be the leader of my life.
Smart. That is smart. Yeah.
I don't have to hurt you to stop you from hurting me. I can walk away, shut the door, whatever I need to do. But, I don't have to let you change my behavior.
Yes, exactly. No, it goes back to, like you said, speaking to who you are and doing the work, doing the searching, the discovery of like who you want to be, what you want to stand for. And that's another cool thing about life too, is that we get to decide who we want to be whenever we want to. We get to decide. We can change our minds and change our paths at any moment, which is both good and bad, of course, and goes back to deciding who you want to be in what situations and why. Like I was listening to Kobe Bryant. I love basketball, and he was talking about how whenever he went into a game, he would literally imagine him wearing the mask of Michael Myers from Halloween. So he'd go into the mindset of being of a emotionally cold state where nothing can phase him. He just performs well. But of course, once he steps off that basketball court, he's able to take off that mask figuratively, and then be able to be a joyful, happy man for his family and friends and stuff like that. And so it goes back to deciding who you want to be and why and what situations and how you're going to approach that.
Yeah. So we're getting a little bit off of the topic of the podcast, but I actually like our discussion. So
go with the flow. Go with the flow here.
So what is the most important thing that you want your listeners and viewers to take from your podcast?
I want them to know that they don't need to make the same mistakes as other people, because the people who I interview on my show, I say, what was your journey? What was your experience like? What would you have done differently? What do you wish you knew earlier? And that way, by people being able to provide that knowledge, provide that insight, people can go, oh, so I know now that I probably shouldn't just rely on if I build it, they will come. That I do actually need to promote and market and offer things to people. And that way they don't cross their fingers for 2-3 years and going, geez, they should be coming any minute now, any minute. That when they listen to this show, they go, oh, okay, I need to be acting today, not waiting 2 or 3 years and crossing my fingers kind of thing. So that's definitely the most important and most important takeaway I want people to have. And I have been bringing people in a variety of backgrounds. So I brought in people who run Airbnb businesses. I brought in people who do video marketing businesses, who talk about how to get your business to the top of SEO search on Google and be on the front page. So I love bringing people from a variety of topics and just giving advice that goes back to, don't make the same mistakes as others, create more freedom and happiness and joy in your life, and be a successful professional along the way, and make things happen faster.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, if you take the time to learn from somebody else, you gain so much, because you get to broaden your own perspective, for one thing, when you're listening to their story. And because we all have a limited perspective, there's only so much you can see from your point of view. This is one of the things I love about art, is that it teaches you that. Like, perspective is not reality. Perspective is a skewed and distorted version of reality based on a limited point of view that you have. Because realistically, if I look at the chair from across the room, there's only a certain part of it that I can see. And from my vantage point, it actually looks like one of the arms of the chairs is higher than the other, even though I know that's not true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It looks like the seat is tilted. It looks like one arm is higher than the other. So if I base my actions and my decisions and my determinations on what my eyeballs are telling me, I'm going to get some really bad results, especially if I were to try and sit based on what my eyeballs are telling me. But if I go over there and I study what the chair actually is, if I want to build a chair, right, I need to know what the chair actually is. I need to understand that that my eyes are not telling me the truth. They're telling me a distorted version of the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what we get from other people's stories, is we get that understanding that we're not seeing the whole picture.
Yeah, and I think that speaks a lot to, human nature and human interactions. We live in an age where people think everything has to be black and white, whether it's politically, whether it's health-wise, whether it's scientifically. But people need to understand that there's always a spectrum, and just because you come from a certain background doesn't mean you're thinking the same way as someone who comes from a similar background. And so that's a really good point, is just understanding that, yes, stereotypes are there for a reason, but there's always exceptions to the rule, and there's always different ways to look at things and experiences. And one moment doesn't have to define someone. And a classic example I like to think of is going back to the two paths. The person who invented dynamite, he felt bad for how destructive dynamite was, that he actually invented the Nobel Peace Prize Award Foundation, and was able to, have that double impact on the world, obviously, of like causing all this quote unquote destruction, and then also causing all this quote unquote peace as well. So this goes back to, the importance of perspective, like you said.
Oh, well, that's an interesting point, though. It's like great good can often come out of our worst mistakes. Like
Yeah.
the things that we regret the most can sometimes be that impetus for us to change direction and change our lives and create a better world because we made that mistake, if we allow it. So I think it's great that your podcast kind of it deals with those mistakes, allows people to capitalize on it and turn a mistake into something positive by bringing it to somebody else and sharing the wisdom from it.
Yeah, and I will say, so my father, he's a successful entrepreneur, and I did ask him, so I want to give a shout out to the specific episode. Definitely check it out. I think it's episode 4 of it's called like Get Out of the Rat Race and Be a 7-Figure Entrepreneur by the time you turn 30. And I asked him, because life as an entrepreneur, I'm sure Brandy, there's a lot of good days and there's a few bad days along the way too. And so I asked him, how would you have, looking back, how would you have known better to not, invest in those bad business deals or invest in those opportunities where people screwed you over or scammed you and stuff? And he goes, I should have listened more to what I was an expert on. He talked about how one bad business deal he did was trying to invest in an airport. And then that lost him a bunch of money. And he goes, my expertise was in the restaurant industry. My expertise was in, being involved with that. So if I had known to invest more of my money in what I was already an expert on, that would save me a lot of money and a lot of hassle and a lot of hair pulling for sure.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's one of the things that I've also heard from a lady that I interviewed in 2016 for her story. She was talking about the fact that her second business failure was when she invested in gyms. She's like, I didn't even like going to the gym. I didn't even know anything about gyms, but I thought it would be a great branch off for my brand, which was nutrition. And so I thought it would be a great fit. I didn't realize how much time, money, energy, and how many mistakes there were to be made in opening a gym. And she said, I didn't even slow down. I opened 5 of them simultaneously.
Wow.
And so she ended up $2.5 million in debt.
Oh my gosh.
She's like, I thought I would never climb out of that hole. But that's also something she learned, is that no matter how big the hole is, you can climb out of it. Don't let a momentary failure be the thing that you decide your life on.
Did she have to claim bankruptcy, or she somehow found another business model that bailed her out?
I think she did both. And, she ended up declaring bankruptcy, but then she also took the last of her money and came over to the United States, met a guy, she mentored with him, and he helped her put together a model based on her successes and capitalizing on her strengths that allowed her to scale her business.
And she
So-
stayed in the gym industry?
No, she got out of that.
That makes sense.
She was like, yeah, no, that's not for me. That didn't really make sense. But yeah, I mean, sometimes we try things that are outside of our strengths, and then we discover why that's maybe not such a good idea. Yeah, it's like I tell people, I don't have the most successful business in the world, but some of that is because of the choices I've made and how to spend my time. I chose not to invest all of my time in my business. I choose to sometimes sleep.
Yes, sleeping is good.
I choose to spend time with my family and prioritize relationships over the money. So, there are choices that I've made that have limited my income, but I am the better for them in my own opinion. So I don't have any regrets there. But I have tried things that were outside of my experience and expertise, and you're always going to struggle in those areas.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, so my father, he has started other businesses that were outside of his expertise, but at least it was like a similar model per se. Like he wasn't selling food, but he was selling like toys, for example. And so yeah, I don't want to say only stay in the one thing, because as humans, we're always learning, we're always growing, we're always optimizing. And so, going back to that airport example, if he had gone, what, that was a bad mistake, but I do want to figure out how to properly invest into airports, I'm sure he could have figured it out.
Yeah.
But it goes back to it's okay to still take chances. It's okay to still broaden your horizons. But like you said, with that other entrepreneur story too, like if you're like, what, I just know gyms aren't my strength, I'm going to focus on my strengths, then definitely capitalize on that, because it's a lot easier to capitalize on your strengths than focus on your weaknesses.
Yeah, I agree. So you started out in sales and marketing. So podcasting is, for example, a branch off of, some people might consider it's branching into territory that's outside of that. And so you are going to run into things you didn't expect. You are going to run into things that aren't in your wheelhouse, and you're having to figure it out and learn. But I do think there are advantages to challenging yourself that way and growing in that direction, broadening your skills and taking yourself to a new level. So if somebody wanted to listen to your podcast, where would they go to find episodes?
Wherever they go to listen to podcasts. Because I just launched, I'm working, it's so crazy how many different platforms you can put your podcast on, from Castbox to Google Podcasts to Spotify to Apple to Stitcher to Podchaser, and the list goes on and on. But right now it is currently on iTunes, or Apple Podcasts, I should say. It is on Spotify, and you just type in Rapid Results with Andrew Weiss, and it will pop up, and there'll be a photo of me, doing my little smirk, looking at the words Rapid Results as I, it should be easy to find and easy to listen to. And I'm working on constantly getting more platforms. So if you don't have Spotify or Apple or Google Podcasts yet, I'll work on keep getting on more platforms. But yeah, if you type in Rapid Results with Andrew Weiss, you should be able to find it on any platform.
And I'm sure if they Google, they could probably do it too.
Exactly. Google's very helpful too.
Yeah, Google's your friend. Google's your friend. Are you having any plans to maybe open a YouTube channel?
Yes, so I am streaming my podcast through my YouTube as well. I haven't mastered the thumbnails or the captions or anything yet, or the hashtags, but you can also go on my channel. It's Andrew Weiss. I'm working on getting to my 100 subscribers. So if you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, I would appreciate that. But yeah, it goes back to, still I'm on YouTube too. And I do, because I love video aspect of things, I probably will have, I don't see my podcast ever going audio only, because I do love being on video and welcoming my guests on video. And so whether I keep using YouTube or other platforms for that, it will always be a video podcast too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in the video. You get a better feel for who people are when you're looking at them.
Oh yes, exactly. That's true.
There's just minor body language and personality elements that get missed. So
oh yes,
it's exciting. So excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
How close are you to that 100 subscribers so far?
Well, let's just say I have 90 to go. But we got to start somewhere.
Exactly. Well, here's the thing, and this is part of what I love about marketing. If you go from 10 subscribers to 20, you get to tell people I grew my podcast by 100% in the first year.
Yes, I doubled my listenership. Yes.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
That is the joy of marketing. We get to choose how we frame things.
Yes.
So often people are like, well, what are your numbers? Well, here's my growth trajectory.
And you're telling the truth. You're telling the truth.
Exactly. Never tell things that aren't true, but always frame them in a light that is flattering to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think marketing is actually an exercise in the ultimate form of optimism. It's how can I take a look at this and find the most positive thing that I could say out of this?
Oh, I like that, because I'm definitely a huge advocate for optimism and the benefits of that. And so I like that marketing is one of the best ways to showcase your optimism. So that makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. It is really, because you have to take a look at what a thing is as it is, right? Warts and stretch marks and all the ugly parts included. And then find a way to frame it where you focus on what's beautiful about it.
Yeah.
Focus on what's good. Focus on what's positive. And, obviously you can scam people, which I don't ever recommend, because if your product's crap, please just don't. Improve the product and then market it.
Yes, exactly.
But I do, because ultimately, marketing shouldn't be a scam. It should be you working to communicate a message about something that's going to benefit somebody else. And all products need marketing. This is so funny. I used to work with the homeless, and you would think, free stuff, they would go grab it, right? No problem. We had a table full of emergency blankets, no dry shampoo, so you didn't have to have water to shampoo your hair, and one other thing, sunscreen on the table, right? And I noticed that we had no problems getting rid of the sunscreen. Everybody knew what that was. So they didn't need any marketing there.
Yeah.
But the emergency blankets and the dry shampoo, I'm taking them. I was like,
interesting.
I was like, why? From a marketing perspective, I was like, what's the problem here? Did they not see the value? Because we were in Denver, so you'd think the emergency blankets would have flown off, right?
Yeah.
So then I stopped and I decided maybe this was a marketing problem. And so the next person that came along, I explained what the dry shampoo would do and I explained what the emergency blanket would do, and both were gone. And it was like, yeah, once they understood the value, we didn't have any problem getting them to accept the gift.
Well, how come the emergency blanket wasn't understood? Did they think they weren't worthy of receiving the emergency blanket? Or I'm curious.
No, I think they just didn't understand what it was in the packaging. It just didn't. They didn't know what it would do.
Interesting. They thought it'd be like a fire blanket or something like that. It is interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know what they thought it was, but they didn't really understand until I explained it to them. So once I explained it to them and the value was made clear, then they were like, "Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense."
Yeah, no, I love that. Obviously I'm a big marketing advocate, so that's a great story. That if you even have to explain the importance of dry shampoo to people and without even having to quote unquote sell it, then that speaks to the importance of knowing marketing. That people, it's not that the product itself isn't bad. Hopefully, like you said, most of the time, it's just sometimes it needs extra explaining before people go, "Oh, gotcha."
Right.
And so I'm sure there's a lot of examples of that throughout history of people not understanding the use of a product, but then once they did, it just exploded and threw off the shelves.
Well, I think that's actually one of the problems with most people who are in art or writing or just interpersonal, right? We don't know our own value, and so we don't know how to explain that value to other people in a way that makes sense to them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of value in learning marketing skills, even if you're not going to ever market a product. Because marketing is about learning how to assess the value. What makes something valuable to other people? What need can I meet for other people? that they don't even know they need met. Because we're all need driven. We're all seeking to meet needs. So if you understand the need that you meet, and a lot of people are, well, I make art, so I don't meet any need. And that's actually not true. Beauty, we all have a need for beauty. We look for it because it speaks of hope.
Yeah.
It speaks of better things and a better place than where we are right now. I think this is why we're attracted to beauty.
Oh, yeah.
It reminds us that there's hope. There's something beautiful to look at, makes us feel hopeful. So, if I were operating a clinic for depressed people, for instance, I would make sure that there was beautiful art in the waiting room.
Oh, yes. 100%.
That surround them with beauty and beautiful things to remind them that this world is worth being in.
I love that. And I think, I know it's kind of cheesy, but I still like it. That all the artists say, well, if you take the word earth, art covers between the E and the H. And so art is a large part of earth. But of course, I also want to advocate for science too. It goes back to, yin and yang and moderation, that you need both. You need creativity and beauty, but you also need logistical, tangible things to help the world go around as well.
Well, I spent years fighting my son in education. He did not have any use for school. He did not understand why he should have to go to school. He did not want to have to deal with this. And no explanation that we gave would suffice. Seventh grade year, I told him, okay, I am done fighting. We're not fighting from this point forward. Mm-hmm. You're either going to sink or you're going to swim, but you're going to do it on your own because mommy is not coming in to rescue you.
Yeah.
And I picked seventh grade because I knew it was something where if he did fail out, it would be okay. It wasn't going to go on his permanent record. It wasn't going to hurt him. He could repeat the grade without it being a huge deal. And sure enough, 6 weeks before the end of the year, the kid is failing. I want you to understand this. English was his best subject. He was failing English. He was failing history. He loved history.
Wow.
And it was not because he hadn't done his work. It was because he wouldn't turn his work in.
What?
I was like, yeah, exactly. I was like, that is illogical to me. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
And when I sat down and thought about it, I realized this is about control. He wants to prove to us that, yes, you can make me sit in the seat. You can make me do the work, but you cannot make me perform. And so I sat down and prayed. I said, Lord, please, Jesus, help me, or I'm going to take this child out of this world. Because
Interesting. Oh, yeah.
I have just reached my end with him.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, God, was good to me. And like a couple of hours later, I realized education's purpose is it's a toolbox that we hand from one generation to the next. Mm-hmm. And inside of that toolbox is everything the child needs to figure out how to answer their own questions about life, the universe, and their purpose in it. Because 99% of our questions about life, the universe, and our purpose in it have been answered by somebody else. But we need to figure out how to find those answers, how to assess those answers for whether or not they're reliable and trustworthy, and how to implement them. And that's what education teaches you when it's done properly. I'm not saying it always does it properly, but when it does properly. So for instance, you need to learn as many languages as possible because some of those languages are in other languages than your native language. And getting somebody else's translation leaves you dependent on how reliable a translator they are. Mm-hmm. Plus, there's aspects of it you'll miss. Like, for instance, the Hebrew language has 3 levels. So one word can have multiple meanings. It could be the whole phrasing of the single thing can unlock a totally different understanding if you know the language itself. So anyway, so there's that. But science is about testing those answers because the best lies are 99.9% truth.
Oh.
That's what makes them believable.
Yeah.
Okay. The more truth there is, the more believable the lie. But science, the reason we test continuously is because when there is a lie involved, that lie will flake off. You'll find the lie. And you just keep testing and testing and testing. and you get more and more of the lies flaking off until you get to the real thing. Now, you can never be 100% sure, though, because there could always be another fragment of lie mixed in with the truth. So that's why science is not about truth. It's about finding the lie, not the truth. It can't find the truth. It can never prove a truth. Math can prove a truth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you need math for that part.
Yes.
That's why
true.
science and math go together, right?
Well, I do like the, math can also be tricky too, because, they say, oh, well, 2 + 2 = 4, but one example is, well, not necessarily, because what if you take 2 clouds together and then put them together? Then you equal 1 cloud.
Well, it depends on how you're framing it. Yes.
Yeah.
With math, you do have to be careful, because lies can be told with math just as much as they can be told with anything.
Oh, lies with statistics, especially, for
right.
sure.
Well, then, with Samuel Clemens, aka Mark Twain, was like, there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics.
Yep. Yeah, I like that one. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, that's one of those things you have to learn too. And then history is all the experiments that human beings have conducted on how best to respond to various situations and what the outcomes was. So going back to your podcast, that's what history is.
Yeah.
Rapid results, you learning from the mistakes and capitalizing on the positive experiences of humanity. So you don't have to repeat the mistakes, and you can benefit from the wisdom.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, that's the theme of the show.
At any rate, but thank you so much for joining me, Andrew. Again, if they want to find it, they're going to look for Rapid Results with Andrew Weiss on either Google or YouTube or whatever, the Apple Podcast.
And Spotify too. Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to start listening, because, I also need Rapid Results.
There you go. There you go.
I don't think anybody wants slow results.
No, I don't think so either. But I know things take time, but there are still ways to be effective with that time as well.
Yeah. Well, learning from other people's wisdom is the greatest shortcut we have. You can't hasten the journey of growth, because it takes personal growth, except by learning from other people.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're doomed to repeat and reinvent the wheel, and ain't nobody got time for that.
Exactly. At least you don't want to make time for that. Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks again, Andrew, and you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you guys for watching and listening and tuning in to It's Truly Novel. I'm very excited to have you here, and have a great day.